Well, hello folks. Great to have you join me on Learning English Language with Uncle AY. So today's topic will be looking at clause. But then before I proceed, let me say that we already ended the series on phrase. The last couple of videos I've had to share, I was talking about phrase, its types, and we looked at many examples, and I recall listing out 7 types of phrase, of which we had to talk about just 3. The first 3 in the noun phrase, adjectival phrase, and of course the adverbial phrase. And this is not to say that the remaining 4 are insignificant. In fact, they are very, very much significant as the first 3 we talked about. But the reason why I had to place a full stop there, of which I'll still go further in subsequent videos, is because examination bodies, right, talking about WAEC now, O-level exams, tend to test students on the first 3 I talked about. And so that's the reason why I just had to put a full stop on going further. And of course, I'll pick it up much later in the subsequent videos that I will be sharing. But I want us to just go right into the next topic, which is clause and the definition. So big question is, what is a clause? A clause is a group of words that does possess a finite verb. And because it possesses a finite verb, it may or may not make a complete sense, idea, thought, or expression. I'll go over that again. A clause is a group of words that does possess a finite verb. It contains a finite verb. And because it contains a finite verb, it may or may not make a complete sense, idea, thought, or expression. So you can see that in the build-up to the definition, a clause here possesses a finite verb. As opposed to when we studied phrase, and we're made to understand that a phrase doesn't even possess any finite verb at all. But then when we continue, it has a finite verb. That's a clause now. But then it may or may not make a complete sense. It may or may not. So you can see that there's even a clause in the topic, clause itself, right? And this is because there are 2 types of clauses. The very first one is the main clause, which is also known as the independent clause. And then the next one is the subordinate or the dependent clause. And you see, for the main clause, right, these are clauses that are able to stand on their own. Yes, they possess a finite verb, they are able to stand on their own, and they make that comprehensive expression such that whoever reads or whoever listens is able to understand without any hassles. So that said, if you look at the sentence before us, number 1 here says, we enjoyed the football match. We enjoyed the football match. So there's a finite verb in this sentence, which is enjoyed, right? You can see that the sentence itself is very straightforward. Very straightforward. We enjoyed the football match. So when you tell somebody this, or whoever listens to this knows that there is no subtraction from the sentence. So it is that straight. So it contains a finite verb, and then it makes that complete expression. So the next one here says, my father works in a bank. My father works in a bank. So here is our finite verb, and you can see that the sentence itself is straightforward. It's straightforward. It's able to stand on its own. It is independent that way. So now let's go over to number 2, which is the subordinate or the dependent clause. Yeah. So what is a subordinate or dependent clause? A subordinate or dependent clause is a clause that cannot stand on its own despite the fact that it possesses a finite verb. So it has to come back here to rely, or just like the word now, depend, right? Depend on the independent clause to make a comprehensible expression or statement as such. If you look at the first expression here, it says, because it was raining. Because it was raining. There's a full stop here. So look at it so well. It tells you that it is not comprehensive or understandable enough, which means that there has to be more to it. Whether there has to be an additional statement coming right after it or before it. But then there's a full stop here. Because it was raining. Yes. Okay. What's more to it? You ask yourself these questions. So this makes it a subordinate clause. And also because it starts with this particular word, in because. Yes, there are so many examples of words that introduces a subordinate clause. Other examples are, there's until. Yeah, we also have which, there's whose, there is that, there is although, and so on and so forth. So this right here is a subordinate or dependent clause because it is not able to make a complete expression despite the fact that it possesses a finite verb in was or was raining. So that's it. So the next expression here says until the bus arrives. Until the bus arrives. Now if you look at this expression well, you find that it possesses a finite verb in arrives. But just like the first one, it is still unable to make that complete idea sense or thoughts. Yes, it is incomplete because there has to be more to it. Until the bus arrives, it can't just end there. There has to be more to it, whether before or after it. But then it stops here. So if you're reading this or someone tells it to you and then continues to tell it to you, definitely out of curiosity you want to ask, okay, what's more to it? Is there something else you want to tell me? But then it stops here, it doesn't go further, but then it possesses a finite verb. So it makes it a subordinate clause. And let's not forget what introduces it, until, right? So that said, the next topic, we're still very, very much on clause, but the next thing we'll be looking at is, we're coming back to the main or independent clause, where we'll be looking at the types of main or the independent clause. There are 4 of them in number. So let's anticipate my next video where I'll be doing well to expose all of them to us. And thank you so much for the attention over time. Thank you so much for the feedbacks. I mean, very many likes as well as comments, and I'll see you in the next video. I do thank you for your attention.